Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is co-host Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing very well,
Great.
and I'm very excited about our program today. We have a special guest, and he has lots to tell us. It's too bad we have not an hour or two. Maybe we'll have to get him back if we don't get all the answers that we're looking for. But our guest is the founder of a very big organization that he started a long time ago, Curves International, very, very successful business. But his name is Gary Heavin. Gary, I want to welcome you to the program.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. But Gary has an interesting story. I want him to tell us a little bit about his bringing up, teenage years and his early years in college. Even though we could spend the whole program on that, I just want to get people to know that things weren't laid out on a platter for you. You had to work for what you got. And then tell us a little bit why you started that particular business called Curves International.
Yes, sir. Be glad to. People think that success has a lot to do with luck. And what I found is that the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah, there you go.
And, we live in a time of victimhood, and being a victim kind of it gives you a pass on personal responsibility. And what a tragedy. As an American, I just want opportunity. I just want freedom to do what I want to do, and I know we're aligned on that. People ask me why I started Curves. I'm a man, and it seemed like an odd thing to do. The kind of the short story is that I woke up one morning and I was 13, living not too far away from here in Conroe, and I found that my mother, who had just turned 40, had died in her sleep. And I had to call the ambulance. I had to comfort my two little brothers that were there. And something drove me. I went to college early, actually, at 17. But I dropped out after a couple of years because I had no money. And I had a chance to take over a health club that was going out of business. And I turned into a women's gym right away, and that began my career healing women. And I didn't realize that my whole life was about caring for women and preventing their tragedies because of what happened to me with my own mother. I didn't realize that until I was 40 years old. And I opened that first gym here in Houston at age 20 and almost starved to death the first year. Couldn't afford a car, lived in the nursery in the evenings. But I kind of figured the gym business out. I learned it and systemized it. At age 26, I had 6 locations, $1 million financial statement. At age 30, I had 14 locations and went bankrupt. Now, my old friend Zig Ziglar said, it's not how fast you run that wins the race, it's how quickly you get up after you fall.
There you go.
And I got up rather quickly, and with my beautiful wife, Diane, as my partner, who shared a passion for fitness and for caring for women. We opened Curves when I was in my late 30s down in Harlingen, Texas. Curves was really a smallest common denominator of what women needed to get in shape. We were able to provide a 30-minute total workout, create a franchise concept that was low cost. You didn't have to go borrow a lot of money to be able to take care of the women. Wonderful training program. And before you knew it, we became the fastest growing of all franchise companies in the history of the world. It took McDonald's 5 years to reach 5,000 locations. Took Subway 6 years, and Curves did it in 4 years. So we're providing women with something they desperately needed, which was a safe place for them to get into shape. So that's a quick review.
Yes, that's very good, and I know it was very successful. But you have done a lot since then too, and we're also fascinated, with your philosophy of government and that sort of thing. And I remember hearing you say that you called yourself a right-to-life libertarian, which is always fascinating for me because libertarians are supposed to not be right to life, but that's a bit of a fallacy too, because I don't know how people can defend liberty without believing in right to life. And I know you've worked a long time in right to life. So Daniel, do you have a question for Gary?
Sure. Well, I thought, well, you know, the great thing about you, Gary, is that you're, first of all, fantastic businessman, extraordinarily successful, but a great philanthropist. You've used your great success to the aid of other people, and we were talking about just before we went on the Haiti situation. I mean, some of the stories that you were telling off camera, we should have had the camera on because they were so harrowing, and there's so many great stories. And you know, I focus a lot on foreign policy. I would love to hear you just tell us a little bit about what happened and what your impressions were.
Yeah, Daniel, you know, there's a biblical law, the law of reciprocity, which goes like this. If resources can flow through you to meet the needs of others, you'll be given more resources. And I really have tested that biblical law. And Pat Robertson, by the way, taught me that in his book, The Kingdom Laws. The other thing is that to whom much has been given, much is expected. So it was really natural for me to let resources flow through me. And you know, it sounds like it's unselfish or altruistic and all that, but giving's fun. And Haiti was maybe the most fun time I've had in my life.
Wow.
My wife and I have been working there since the earthquake. But in 2015, we had a terrible Hurricane Matthew, that went through there and destroyed the homes of 1 million people, their animals, their crops. And I was able to, as a pilot, I was able to take 3 of my aircraft there, and we began to fly doctors and medical people and food out to the extremities. And on the way back, we didn't take empty aircraft. We loaded the planes with gurneys of injured people. In fact, we took dozens and dozens of dying people back to Port-au-Prince. We were the only air rescue in the country. These people would have been out in the boonies and not have survived it if we hadn't done that. I'll tell you another Haiti experience that I had that's related to Dr. Paul. Rand came to Haiti with me about 1.5 years ago, along with 2 other ophthalmologists, and we did the cataract surgery on 200 blind, elderly, desperately poor Haitians.
Wow.
And over a 3-day period of time, 200 people that were blind could see. My wife's job was to take the bandage off, and her face was the first thing many of them had seen.
Oh, wow.
I had to comfort them. No, that's not your wife, that's my wife.
Take it easy.
But of all the things I've done there, giving sight to the blind was probably the most rewarding.
If I could just say one thing, excuse me. Pardon me, talk about aid. I was just reading this statistic. I'm sure you'll comment on it. The U.S. government spent $1.5 billion on relief in Haiti. Less than 1 penny per aid dollar went to the actual Haitian organizations, to Haitians.
Yeah. You know,
You didn't have that problem, did you?
No, you know, spending your own money gives you the freedom to make sure that it goes to the people in need. And I'll give you an example. That my wife's goal last year was to send 1 million pounds of food to Haiti, and have it distributed through organizations that we're personally acquainted with. She reached her goal. Her goal this year was to do 500,000. I was telling Dr. Paul, she was through 250,000 pounds by the end of January. So she's recommitted to the 1 million pounds and is well on her way to do that. But you know, there's good people in Haiti that have been there many, many years. Lifeline is a great organization that we work with. They've been there 38 years. We have a school for 1,200 children. We have a food distribution program that feeds the entire community. We've built 1,000 homes there for poor Haitians. We have a clinic that's staffed by a doctor, and a team comes in to do the complicated things periodically. So, you know, giving should be done with the responsibility. The government is lousy at it. We shouldn't just let the government take on those kind of responsibilities. After all, it's our money. They're spending our money to do it. They don't do it very well. And when the Clintons were involved, it was one of the most corrupt. The Clinton Foundation collected over $2 billion for Haiti, and less than 1% actually got to the people. They stole $2 billion, and $3 million went to Chelsea's wedding, by the way. Okay? They stole this money from the poorest of the poor in our hemisphere. I'm not a big Clinton fan. They're the most thieving, miserable human beings on the planet. astounding to me that anyone would vote for this woman who is a proven psychopath and thief. Did I say what was on my mind?
Yeah. We don't want you to be bashful. And I want to bring up another subject. I don't think you'll be bashful because you've traveled a lot, you have opinions about foreign policy, and you have challenged this whole notion that we have a responsibility to sacrifice ourselves and therefore we go and try to destroy ISIS. And you had a different spin on that because maybe it isn't quite the way it seems, that maybe ISIS is not exactly the enemy when it comes to the way we practice our foreign policy. And we have mentioned a little bit of this on this program, but you have some experience with this as well.
Yeah, I've traveled all over the Middle East. The thing that woke me up on ISIS was when ISIS went into Mosul a number of years ago, and they captured 2,500 armored Humvees, tanks, $1 billion worth of military supplies, and just drove it out of town. I asked several of my military friends, what's the procedure when this happens? And they said, we would send in a couple of F-18s and destroy it all, but it didn't happen. Obama didn't give the order. So I thought to myself, well, this doesn't make sense. This must be by design. Obama must have completely armed ISIS for a reason, because there was an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. It could have easily sent in a couple of F-18s. So I realized something did not make sense. And then as I began to follow the ISIS story, I realized what was really going on. ISIS was created and supported by the Americans to fight a proxy war against Assad in Syria. And of course, the imperialism, the motive to bring down Assad is about pipelines and oil and central banks and the old standard that our State Department and our elitists have used in Central America, South America. It's just the same old story. And of course, people have to understand the mainstream media is bought and paid for. They're nothing but a propaganda agency. We now know from the Washington Post that they get significant funding directly from the CIA. Dr. Paul, that's why programs like yours are so important. The American people, they've been slow to wake up, but they're waking up now, realizing that they've been lied to, that freedom requires investment in effort, diligence, and we're part of a movement helping American people to open their eyes and see the truth and to take our country back.
In reality. Daniel.
Well, people might hear that and they might say, that's shocking, Gary. What are you trying to say here? There is a precedent. We did create the Mujahideen in the 70s in Afghanistan. We wanted to take down the Soviet Empire. Brzezinski was warned, hey, you're creating radical Islam. He said, no big deal. Once we get rid of the Soviets, everything will be fine. Well, a little thing called 9/11 happened, all sorts of other things happened, and now we've got this other big crisis, the Mujahideen. But my question for you would be then, in light of this, I was just reading before the show started that the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, told the press that the president has made a decision on Syria. It's going to be announced in the next couple of days. What do you think it should be?
Well, we need to bring our kids home. I'm an anti-imperialist. We need to live within our means. We need to guard our borders, and we need to mind our own business. I've been watching Putin's actions. He appears to be an Orthodox Christian. He's defending his country, which is what his responsibility is in his job. He's tolerated, just 2 weeks ago, the American military did an airstrike into Syria against Assad's people, which allowed ISIS to then come in and attack. We provided air cover for ISIS 2 weeks ago. Putin sits back and watches this. I mean, this is a man who is bending over backwards to try to maintain peace. Trump also agreed to set up a meeting with Putin at the White House, which I thought was wonderful. Now, what's interesting about this, he's doing all of these things, inviting Putin to the White House, saying we're bringing the kids back from Syria, but then he's got Pompeo and Bolton and all these nutcases. They've never met a war they didn't like, and he's putting them into positions of power. So I agree with Dr. Paul on this. The proof is going to be in action. what does he really do as he follows through? I've been hopeful that Trump is going to be standing against the deep state and the people in power that have been bought and paid for by the moneyed interest. But I've been disappointed almost as much as I've been, gratified by what he's doing. So I'm hoping this is a sign of good things to come.
Let's hope so. Gary, you talk about your religion, your religious beliefs, and there was a change in your life, and you directed it, and you've been very successful. And it's connected to your opinion about working for a living and earning what you get. But you've also worked into this, I imagine, it goes along with your religious beliefs of generosity and making sense. And it's not self-sacrifice as much as you're rewarded as well. But was there ever a time when there was a reconciliation of your personal thoughts like that into the foreign policy? Did you ever have a line there and say, well, this is good. This is my personal life, my work life, my religious life, and I'm generous. But I haven't thought too much about this foreign policy. Now you speak of a foreign policy, which of course is something we strongly endorse. Did you ever have that period of time of applying your original philosophy to the foreign policy as well?
Yeah, it took going to jail for me.
I don't want to do that.
No, you can read about it in Reader's Digest, February 2009. 9 million people have read it, so what the heck, right? I won't go into the story, but I had time to contemplate and really assess my values. And so as I kind of was born again, and I was actually saved at my mother's deathbed, holding her body, because I knew I needed God at that point desperately. But and I felt the protection and the cover as a teenager, but my decisions were not that great, right? So my rebirth was really at age 30, where I assessed my values. Part of it was we were going to found a company, my wife and I, that created opportunity. We weren't going to give people a safety or a hammock. We were going to give them a safety net. And opportunity. And I used to give this speech to thousands of my franchisees. And by the way, we're in 90 countries all over the world. We had 10,000 of them at one time. We were the 10th largest of all franchise companies. So, and it's funny, in cultures, we have 2,000 locations in Japan right now.
Wow.
Even in Japan, the idea of opportunity is all you really want, and support to pursue your dream, not a handout, but a hand up. And we applied that to business, and we became, as I mentioned, the fastest growing franchise in history by creating opportunity for people. And the ones that didn't succeed or that were blaming me were the ones that didn't do their part.
Right.
They were expecting something to be done for them, and I didn't charge them for that. Never promised them that. So I think that philosophy then transfers over into government. I want government to give me an opportunity, mostly by staying out of my way. And I do business in China, in Vietnam, in Russia, communist countries. The tax rate, the top tax rate in Russia and China is only 13.5%. That's a communist country where you're owned by the state.
Yeah.
And we're over here in a free country where our tax rate's still close to 40%. So yeah, I think my rebirth and awakening of life is just. And by the way, this is so important. I wake up every morning and get on my knees and I thank God from a position of gratefulness. And boy, does that frame things. If you want to live well, be grateful for everything you've got and focus on that.
Daniel?
One of the other things that's sort of taking a little bit of a turn here that I find very fascinating is that you've gone into producing movies, you've gone into acting into movies, because I think you want to deliver your message through the media, which is a really big issue. Now, when I heard we were going to have you here, we were so thrilled. We saw your film from 2016, Amerigeddon. It's an action film. The UN comes and takes over the U.S. They want to take our guns. You've got some survival-minded people who fight them off. It's an exciting and a fun movie. I want to ask you, with that, thinking of that movie, and I encourage everyone to see a film because it's fun. When you see young people now demonstrating on the streets, saying, please, government, take away our rights to the Second Amendment, that's got to rub you the wrong way.
Yeah, that movie, Amerigeddon, was made because I wanted a movie with a message. And there were two messages that were really important. One was that there was a threat to the U.S. that still exists that's greater than nuclear attacks by China or Russia. It's a threat of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse attack, that would come perhaps from one of the two North Korean satellites that cross over the center of our country every day at the perfect altitude. I asked Dr. Peter Pry, who's the director of the task force on EMP for the country, who headed up two congressional reports. You may remember that, the EMP congressional report of 2006, I believe. Is there a chance that that satellite has a nuclear device on it? And this was his answer. We need to shoot it down. We need to shoot it down.
Wow.
And so I wanted to raise awareness that we needed to deal with that. And I've gotten the word to Trump, by the way, who is aware of it. That's how we're going to get hit when we get hit. But the other thing was, the message in the movie was about the power government has taken over. You know, the National Defense Authorization Act, which allows the government to arrest an American citizen without charging them, hold them indefinitely with no representation. You know, that is so unconstitutional, and the American people are unaware of it. And so I made sure that all of the policies, the government threats to the freedom of Americans were factual. So it educated people to a variety of threats that we have against our freedoms. So when I look at these kids who are just pawns, useful idiots in an effort to disarm us, and I believe that when people are disarmed, they're then killed. And you know, I am going to defend my family. I'm going to defend my state, and if I can, my country, from these people that would take away our freedoms and then maybe worse.
Gary, we're getting near the end, but I want to ask a question about, I'm sure you have an opinion and you have some experience in, and that is the business climate, the marketplaces, the debt, just general direction of the country. You know, there are people 10, 15, 20 years ago, we're in trouble, we're in trouble, we're in trouble. That was when the debt was 10 trillion, now it's 21 trillion, this sort of thing. Where do you come down on this, and do you put the major, can you pinpoint the blame? I know there's quite a few places, but I think you can sometimes pinpoint certain reasons why we have drifted and why our tax rate might be higher than the communists, you know, this sort of thing. And what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, you know, I'll try to give a short answer to that question that's tough. First of all, this debt is sustainable only to a point. You know, we're going to come to a point where it is no longer sustainable. George W. Bush, those were his exact words to me in private a number of years ago when I asked him about it. So I think our prosperity at the moment is temporary. I'm glad that Trump is getting rid of regulations and even the trade wars, and I read your words on it. We might actually disagree on this a little bit. You know, I completely believe in free trade. However, you know, when China is subsidizing industries in the way they are, you know, perhaps there's something that we do to intervene very cautiously. Otherwise, free trade is good. But ultimately, I believe that the central banks have printed the massive amounts of money and bought the assets to sustain the stock market, to keep things going until they don't want it to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, very good. Daniel, do you have a short one to finish up here?
Well, I appreciate talking to you and talking about this. We talked about, before we started the show, this false idea that to be pro-patriotism, you have to be pro-militarism, and that's I think the main thing that you want to debunk with your view of the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you stand up and say, look, we don't need to be in the Middle East, certainly not in Syria, that ISIS was actually funded and trained by the American government to serve as a proxy to bring down Assad. I mean, the media is not going to tell you about that. But if somebody like me brings it up because it's so obvious, they ridicule you. And they ridicule you right out of the book of Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. Yeah. And so those of you that have a passion for truth, I would suggest that you demand the right to ask questions. I'm going to ask questions. And if you don't like me asking questions, then you can go to,
Hades?
yeah, Hades.
Good. Well, wonderful, Gary, and thank you very much for being with us today. This has been great, and maybe someday we'll get you back on this program, and maybe we'll get you to one of our conferences one of these days as well. And I do want to thank our audience for tuning in today. I think it was a fantastic program, and please return soon to the Liberty Report.